A really problematic comment that I get underneath a lot of my cultural comparison videos is this comment or this idea that if you're going to immigrate, the least you could do is to look up what the cultural differences are so you know and you're prepared when you get there. And I get why this makes people feel better. It makes them feel a little bit superior, like, hey, if I were to move to a different country, I would be one of the good immigrants that looks everything up and isn't making all these faux pas because I've taken the time to educate myself properly. But the reality is, if you're moving to a country that has a vastly different mentality and system set up than the country that you're currently living in, you are going to have faux pas, and there's going to be tons of stuff and tons of cultural differences that you could not have read about online because nobody's written about them yet, or they'll write about them in a way that's a little bit not quite factual. It's their interpretation as another immigrant of what's happening, and then when you get there, you find out that that interpretation is really far off the mark. It also kind of puts any immigrants that do mess up or have faux pas into this category of oh, they're the bad immigrants. They didn't take the time to educate themselves like I would have done if I was going to their country. When in reality, you can look it up all you want and you're still going to be surprised AF when you get there. There are so many articles online about French culture that have all these cultural rules and faux pas, and it's not true at all. I would say at least a solid 50 to 70% of cultural things I read about with differences between France and the US on blogs are just fake and false and not true whatsoever. I have no idea where they learned that. Before I left, got some black sneakers and stuff because I'd read online about how much French people hate white sneakers, and if you wear white sneakers, they'll instantly know you're an obnoxious American with no cultural values. And so I get there with my black sneakers, get off the plane. Everyone is wearing white sneakers. It's all the rage. Everyone's wearing them. Literally everyone. But then nowhere in my 4 years of French lessons, where we were constantly having little cultural tips slipped in the lessons, and my months and months of voraciously reading and listening to everything I could get my hands onto about French culture, did anyone mention, this was back in 2010, I know this information is on the internet now, it was not in 2010, did anyone mention that you are supposed to say hello a lot more often than you're supposed to in the States, and in very specific scenarios where in the United States you would not be judged for not saying hello in that circumstance, whereas in France, if you don't say hello in these circumstances, it's basically telling people I think you're beneath me and less than human. That's a really important thing to know. You would think somebody would have written that somewhere prior to 2010. Not anywhere that I found. I just don't like that original comment I mentioned because it really puts the emphasis on immigrants being problematic if they're imperfect, whereas nobody can be perfect, nobody can know everything before they come, no matter how hard they try. It's just not possible.